I just Hey everybody, how's it going? This is Basketball Passport. We're watching this clip. This is the same intro clip as we had from last Thursday as well. I just realized for some reason, because during last episode that we recorded, and this is Basketball Passport, Anthony Irwin, Leigh Ellis. During last episode, I was doing some kind of admin work behind the scenes right when we were getting going. I didn't see the players that were walking out from the hallway into that mass of partisan fandom. And I'm like, Leigh, how would you handle that? Like, you're walking out, it's just an airport. It's a Wednesday, and you're walking into like this room where it's all these screaming people who all know this song together. How would you handle that kind of a situation? Well, I should say this. How have you handled that situation in the past, right? With your global fandom?
Yeah. Well, we should also put the context there. That was 4 a.m. on a Thursday morning after Partizan came back from a 2-game road trip in the EuroLeague. They won both games, but they're still out of the play-in right now. But there was actually more to that video that I didn't get in there. It came out just this afternoon. There was a guy there, I think he was there to meet his girlfriend, and he got caught up in it. So they just basically took him into the mosh pit there of the Partizan Belgrade fans and started singing and chanting. So imagine that, you're there with the flowers for the girlfriend, like, oh yeah, baby, I'll pick you up. And all of a sudden you're in a mosh pit with a couple of thousand Partizan Belgrade fans. So it's just crazy, that sort of stuff. I mean, it's January, it's the middle of the EuroLeague season, and the fans are so excited. Like, you see that when a team comes back from winning the championship.
Yeah.
But not regular season games. I haven't seen it before anyway.
2-game winning streak, and we're like, whoa, that's incredible.
And it wasn't even against their rivals or anything. You know, their biggest rivals like Olympiacos or Red Star Belgrade. Obviously, they would be traveling for that, but it was against Milan, I think, and another French team. So wild stuff, man.
A quick reminder before we get going here, please do hit that subscribe button. Please do hit that like button if you guys are watching here on YouTube. This is Basketball Passport. We get together it'll be Sunday nights and probably Friday mornings from here on out, that we get together here. Sunday nights are more of an NBA forward show. Fridays are going to be kind of as you do. You travel on Fridays. So Sundays bring you back home. Fridays send you out into the world is kind of the plan of the show here for the time being, and then the occasional emergencies show if the NBA or anything forces us into such a situation. Please do hit that subscribe button if you guys are listening in the morning via podcast as well. Today on the show, we're going to be talking about the Boston Celtics, who find themselves in a pretty solid rut. You know, last year's Celtics team was absolutely dominant from start to finish in the regular season, and then carried that dominance out into the postseason. This year, a little bit more bumpy. The Hawks, Leigh's Atlanta Hawks, continue to impress. So we'll talk about them as well. We are just about at the midway point of the season, so we will do some award talk as well. We made the conscious decision in this one to avoid Jimmy Butler and to avoid Joel Embiid and to avoid that stuff because it's Sunday and the world is kind of doomy and gloomy enough as it is. Both Leigh and I are getting ready for freezes in our respective cities. So here we go for that. And then finally, Maverick Carter made some noise this week by apparently looking for funding for a $5 billion new basketball league that could or would, I guess, challenge the NBA. So that is interesting as LeBron James kind of heads into potential NBA ownership or the next phase of his career. There's some dominoes to be dropped there as well. But yeah, let's talk about the Boston Celtics, Leigh. How concerned are you about what is going on in Boston, or is this a situation where it's a long NBA season and eventually everybody gets bored?
Well, probably a little bit of both. But this one really comes off last night's victory there by the Hawks, a second time in Boston this season. And I'm not sure if you saw this one, but the Celtics led by 3 points with 20 seconds to go and had the ball in regulation and lost in overtime. A couple of just very bizarre circumstances that the Hawks capitalized on. One of them was Drew Holiday trying to run out the clock. Could have gone for a layup and made it a 5-point game. Instead, brings the ball out, throws it away, and creates a turnover. Like, I get, he's not trying to run up the score at that point or anything like that. It's just trying to play keepy-offy. But there was still so much time. You make it a 2-possession game, and he didn't do that and ended up costing them. But it's just there's some weird energy around the Celtics right now. They just don't look like they're all that locked in defensively. And I think you're right, though, that there is a little bit of boredom there. They cruised along last season so easily with no drama, no locker room drama, and they're kind of sort of started off this season like that. But in the last, I think it's 10 games, I think they've alternated wins and losses here. And they're just looking sort of a little bit disheveled and a little bit ragged. I think they do ultimately sort of, iron these things out when they do get a little close to the play. They're still 3.5 games up in second place anyway, so they can't. I mean, they could catch the Cavs, who are 6 games up on them, but ultimately they're probably going to finish second no matter what happens from here anyway. So, come playoff time, they've got plenty of time to get things right. But I have to say, man, the Hawks there last night were, it was just one of the most incredible performances they've had. There's a pattern that there's got to be a little bit awkward there coming together for the Hawks, because they have terrible first quarters, and then they just come back after that and win these big games again. They've done it in Cleveland, they did it in Boston, they've beaten the Knicks twice. They got the Knicks again tomorrow. We've talked about they've lost to the Wizards and they've lost to the Bulls a couple of times, or at least once to the Bulls. But when they play the big teams like the Bucks as well in Milwaukee, that's when they really stand up. And it's so hard, because I sometimes look at the Hawks and I think, they'll barely make the play in. And other times I'm like, honestly, the 2 teams at the top, they've handled them pretty easily, and then throw the Knicks in there as well. And they could be 3-0 on the Knicks this season if they win there tomorrow. So the Hawks could be, they could lose to the Bulls in the play-in. That could happen. I could see that happening. Or they could be just one of those teams that honestly doesn't really fear anybody in the Eastern Conference, and could have one of those dream runs like they had in the COVID year a few years ago.
I want to talk about the Hawks in a second too, because they are one of my favorite genres of team, right? That young team that, like you said, doesn't fear anybody, is almost like too young and too dumb to recognize what crazy things that they happen to be doing sometimes. The Celtics thing is interesting because they are older than I think people quite give them credit for. Al Horford is certainly no spring chicken. Kristaps Porzingis has been in and out of the lineup all year this year. He is also, and he's oldish and is, those kinds of centers that you get to a certain age and centers start dealing with stuff. Speaking of Joel Embiid, and then Drew Holiday is a little bit older. Derek White is older than people think he is as well. Obviously, you have Jason Tatum, you have Jaylen Brown, you have plenty of youth on the team to bring those averages down a little bit. But I'm not going to call the Celtics washed by any means, but I do think those older teams, especially once you've won a championship and once you know what the final goal is, older teams or teams with older leadership on it have, I think, lower floors in the regular season than we give them credit for. So as much as I would love to sit here as a Lakers fan and say, oh man, watch, the floor might be, falling out from under the Celtics. Yeah. I would love to be able to sit here and say that I'm actually concerned about them. But I do think for the most part, it is a matter of boredom. It is a matter of an older team that kind of recognizes they have bigger goals than wins in, mid to late January. My one note, though, is last year they raced through an Eastern Conference team that was either extremely flawed or extremely broken.
Yes.
This year, the Cavs are very different than any team that they played last year, especially if they're able to get to those Eastern Conference Finals or whenever they would meet Boston, they're a very different team now than they were last year, and they are a very different team than Boston ever faced last year. So that would be the one thing is like, the Lakers found out the hard way in the fourth year of the three-peat year. That fourth year, they kept on thinking, oh, we'll just flip the switch. We'll flip the switch. We'll flip the switch. And then you go to flip it and you're like, oh, dang, the lights aren't quite as bright as we wanted them to be when we flip that switch. And that would be the one thing here is if the Celtics think that they can flip the switch based on the conference, that they went through last year, I would probably tell them, I would maybe pump the brakes on that theory a little bit.
Yeah. Well, the two players there, Horford and Porzingis, did not play last night for, again, both of those reasons, sort of injury, load management, rest, whatever you want to say. And they definitely miss those guys. I mean, Horford, is still an incredibly reliable player that you just know, is solid defensively, spreads the floor on offense. And basically that's what the best of Porzingis does too. So they're missing that, but it just sort of seemed like they ran out onto the Hawks in the first quarter. Then the Hawks basically did the same thing to them in the second. And then, for a championship team to blow at what they did at the end there, because the reason they got a 3-point lead in the first place was because Trae Young picked up a technical with 20 seconds to go with his team down 2. Just, an awful tech. And he was complaining about a non-call there, which fine, complain about it, but you got to know where the line is at that point of the game. So, they sort of got out of it there. But again, I think the Celtics just couldn't get out of their own way there last night. And there was a few other plays where the ball was just moving around in strange ways. And, you just wonder if there is just a bit of a malaise here or if there's something a little deeper going on. I mean, Joe Mazzulla, I don't know what the hell you make out of his scrums and press conferences. He spoke to Abby Chin before the game there last night. And she said, how are you? Yeah, we're right where we want to be. We're right where we want to be. And I was like, I don't know if that, I mean, you're second, great. Things are looking okay, but it was more sort of, that seemed to be that, like, I don't want to talk about anything really that's going on here. So we'll see. But, I remember coming into the season, talking about the age there, it felt to me like they were at a really good spot, that Brown and Tatum are in their primes and get, close, the next few years, they're really going to be at their absolute best while surrounded by good veterans in Drew Holiday and Horford, Porzingis coming off the bench, Derek White. Like, they seem to have all that balance. They were playing great defense. Peyton Pritchard coming off the bench, he's probably the favorite right now for either most improved or sixth man of the year. So they seem to have it all. But, right now, it just seems that they're not on the same page. And it'll be interesting to see. They go on a 4-game road trip right now. Really interesting because they've got the Warriors, the Los Angeles double, and then the Mavericks. So they would want to go no worse than 2-2 on that road trip, I would think. I would think they'd be looking at least 3-1. Exactly which game, who knows, they drop, but I think they would be disappointed with anything less than a split of that 4-game stretch.
Yep, absolutely. Let's talk about those Hawks. The Atlanta Hawks have been a popular subject here on the show. Leigh has been covering basically all of the home games there, going to practices and stuff like that, which is always fun context to get on a team. But specifically, Leigh, a team like this one where they're far outstripping expectations coming into the year. They are a young, fun team that, again, I don't think that, like, it's really fun when a team is too young to kind of recognize, like, who is standing across from them on a basketball court and the stakes that come with those matchups. But also, I think really importantly here, a makeup and an identity that makes a whole bunch of sense around its superstar. And I really believe in the Hawks, if not this year, certainly moving forward. Like, they are going places and heading in a direction that I'm really excited about.
Having been around them all season at home anyway here, it has been quite fascinating because I go back to those early 2 losses against the Wizards and you're like, oh my God, they can't lose to the Wizards. like Quinn Snyder's got to be on the hot seat if that's the way things are going. But what has happened is a couple of things. Trae Young, he's been in off-season trade speculation last season. It was either him or DeJounte Murray had to go. They made the deal for Murray. That was always the one that they were going to most likely make anyway, unless they got significant interest in Trae. But that backcourt partnership with him and DeJounte just didn't work out. But with Trae especially, he could have handled that in a completely different way. He could have pouted and sort of said, all right, I want out too. I've been here long enough. I want to change. But he hasn't done that at all. He's in fact gone the opposite, where he's really taken on a mature leadership role on this team where he knows he can go and get 30, 35 any night he wants. But he is so much more bought in now to like, hey, let's move that ball. Let's get everyone involved. He's leading the league in assists. But there's been nights where he hasn't shot well or scored many points, but you haven't seen that really affect the rest of his game. He's working hard on defense. He played really good D last night. The Celtics tried to switch several times to get him in an ISO. And again, he's always going to face that because he's a small, guard. But he's been working hard to try to just not get shoved off the point, and have guys just basically disrespect him completely on the defensive end. And then, so that's one thing. I think Trae's really bought in. I've talked a lot about Dyson Daniels. That's obviously been a huge personnel move. But I think the other thing is Quinn Snyder has really got these guys bought in and on the same page. And I think because, you look at sort of like the Celtics and the Bulls right now, for example, and even the Suns to some extent, it doesn't look like they're all kind of where they believe in each other and they trust each other. Whereas right now with the Hawks, they've been down a lot of bodies like most teams have at various times, but guys like Garrison Matthews comes off the bench and just fires away, and he's had his moments. Vít Krejci, the Czech Republic player, he's been asked to play point guard, small forward, power forward, come off the bench, defend, run the point, shoot threes, and with mixed success, but he's had the right attitude where he's like, yeah, I'm ready to go whenever I'm called upon. And then there's like Onyeka Okongwu as well coming off the bench. He had a 20-20 off the bench the other night. He's had 3 really strong games. But the point I'm trying to make here is that these guys really do seem to understand, like, who cares who's winning or who's playing, who's getting the stats, who's getting the minutes, like we're winning. And DeAndre Hunter, another one who started the season in the starting lineup, Zachary Shai, the number 1 pick, was coming off the bench. DeAndre had a baby early in the year and an injury at the same time, so he missed about 10 games. Shai came into the starting lineup, and since coming back, Hunter has come off the bench no matter what, even when they've been really short-handed, and he's thrived in that role. And so, again, I think that speaks to just the fact that within the Hawks locker room right now, things are really good. Things are really strong. People have got each other's back. They understand their role. They're all getting minutes. This is a team that legit goes 9 deep on any given night, and that's with a full roster. And when there's been a few nights like against the Bulls the other night, they had no one, and they got Keaton Wallace and what's his name? I can't remember his name. He came up from the G League, and they won in Chicago. And there was no Shai, no Hunter, no Trae, and no Jalen Johnson. I mean, basically gutted the team, and they won easily in Chicago. And I think, again, that just sort of speaks like Quinn's message is getting through. Quinn's message is getting across. Like, he always talks about things like this in the post game. He doesn't care who had the big night scoring the ball or shooting the ball or whatever. He just cares about everyone out there contributing and playing hard. And it's starting now, halfway through the season. I mean, there's been a few stinkers out there, no question. They've had some bad losses. But for the most part, this team doesn't quit in the first half or the first quarter if they're down. They keep on fighting to the end. There's been so many games where they've had to fight and fight and fight. And last night, I think for the second time in Boston was another example of that, where they're working together, they're on the same page, and they're fun to watch. They're really fun to watch. I'm enjoying it. So, where they are right now, as I said before, I can sort of see when they play their worst games, they're out in the play-in in the first round. And their best games, it's like, if they were to draw the Bucks, say, in the first round of the playoffs, a 6v3, something like that, I'd think they could knock off the Bucks, So it's a really, really fun It's been a fun way following this team and just riding the highs and the lows, but seeing for the most part that gradual incline.
Doc Rivers coaching and losing to a lesser team in the playoffs. Never happened before. I've never heard of such a thing. No, I love this Hawks team for all the stuff that you talked about there, and I truly can't wait to see where things go from here. But that notion that you're talking about of a superstar who was kind of drifting away, you kind of start to feel it's not that the end of the rope was over here somewhere, and you're just holding on to the very, very end of it, and you're kind of starting to watch it slip a little bit, and then grabbing a hold of that rope and pulling him back in, and then pulling him into the culture and the identity of the team. It kind of reminds me of very, very differently, but very different situations here. But remember the year Kobe, it was the 2008 season, and he was saying he would play on Pluto. He had that infamous video where he was telling some fans there with a camcorder, get Andrew Bynum out of here. I want to trade for Jason Kidd. And then it was so funny because over the course of that season, Bynum came in and he clearly grew a ton as a player. And Kobe kind of shows up and begrudgingly acknowledges, things are going in the right kind of direction here. And over the course of the season, beat reporters, because it was the story in the season that year, or in the NBA that season, it was the story. Hey, Kobe, still want to be traded, still want to be traded, still want to be traded, still want to be traded. And slowly and steadily over the season, he was kind of recognizing, actually, things are all right here. Right? Bynum, and I remember, I'll never, ever, ever forget it. I've brought this game up on a few times, on a few other occasions on my shows and stuff. But there was a game against the Seattle Supersonics, who, crazy that we're talking about the Seattle Supersonics. But there was a game against Seattle that Bynum played really well. Dropped 27 and 13 or something like that, and the Lakers beat Seattle. And they asked Kobe after the game, hey, what do you think about the growth here from Bynum? The Lakers surprisingly were near the top of the Western Conference standings. What do you think? How things are going here? And Kobe kind of looks into the camera, and he was kind of coy about it all year. Finally, at that last one, he, after this game that Bynum just had, kind of looks right into the camera, goes I don't think I need to go anywhere. Yeah, I think we're figuring it out. I like this. And watching them actually turn that corner now, infamously also, Bynum lands on Odom's foot, dislocates his kneecap. And then on top of that, though, the Lakers wind up making the Pau Gasol trade that year. And that's when Kobe really was bought in, because they went out and got him the help that he really wanted after they had the surprising start to the season. Lamar Odom, like you talked about with DeAndre Hunter, Lamar Odom shifted into a 6-man role as well. And looked a lot better in that role too. So, but all of this is to say, sometimes the best stories, or almost always the best stories, are the human elements and how you see human growth here. And Trae Young, who does have a lot of knocks on him as a leader and as the best player on a team and the superstar max player and some of that stuff, him kind of growing into leader guy, and a roster that makes a whole bunch of sense around him by surrounding him with athleticism and switchable defenders and size on the interior as well. It's a really cool story here in Atlanta. Awesome team to pay attention to. One of my absolute favorite league pass teams.
Well, and I think the Kobe analogy you make there as well, I think there's something to that with Trae, that Kobe, I think, realized to get traded, the other team was going to have to give up all their quality anyway. Yeah. So he was going to go to a situation where you're playing basically the same situation in Detroit or Chicago, wherever it was, whereas well, hang on a minute, you're not going to be any better with them because all their good players have to go to Los Angeles to make you. Now, I think the reference I'm making there is that
they had a trade on the table for that would have sent Kobe to Chicago, and it would have been Deng coming back, and he said, "No, I don't trade for Deng. I want Deng."
Yeah. And so in that sense, like with Trae, that I wonder if he sort of saw. I think it was Windy reporting that there just wasn't a ton of interest in Trey out there,
Yeah.
because teams were like, well, hang on, we sort of like him, but we don't know quite what he is. And so you wonder if that sort of humbles a guy in a way where he's like, oh, maybe this is actually the best situation here for me, where he's the undisputed leader of the team. He gets all the shots he wants. You got to try to figure out a way to make it happen. And then look, things like the Dyson Daniels trade, no one saw that becoming anywhere near as potent as it's
Fruitful.
become.
Yeah. Mhm.
Jalen Johnson has emerged to the point where he won't make the All-Star team this season, but he's certainly on that right trajectory. And then, again, like guys like DeAndre Hunter have really thrived. The only player who's kind of struggling is Bogdanovic right now. He's been injured a lot this season. He can't seem to get into a rhythm and a flow. He's not shooting the ball all that well, but I sort of, again, I see him at practice a lot, and I'm like, Bogey just needs like 5 to 10 games in a row where he can actually get, stay in the rotation and stay fit and healthy, because he's just had such an interrupted season. So, again, for the other point, like for Trey to be leading the league in assists is quite remarkable, because he doesn't go out there stat stuffing those assists. He goes out there,
Yeah.
makes the right plays. And again, the Hawks, that ball is just continually moving around. So I'm sort of shocked that he's able to accumulate that many assists, knowing that he doesn't often it doesn't feel like he makes the last pass. It feels like often he might start the offense, but that ball moves around to 3 or 4 other guys before a shot gets up. So it's good, but it is fun, I think, when you are following a team that you like. What are we going to get tonight? Are we going to get that team that beat the
Yeah.
Lakers in overtime, that fought to the end, that had LeBron, playing his butt off, like forcing like the best response you could get out of LeBron? Or are we going to get the team that you just look at against the Wizards, or even the Nuggets? They were bad against the Nuggets, who the Nuggets had lost to the Wizards the night before. There was no Jamal Murray, and it was like they just got smoked here at home. So, it's a little bit of feast or famine at times, but you sort of, as I was saying earlier, I can see the light at the end of the tunnel here, where I'm like,
Oh,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, they are probably in the right direction here. It's going to be very interesting to see what they do before the deadline, because I think there's interest in a couple of guys again, especially someone like DeAndre. I think he's probably the most likely biggest name that teams are targeting, because with Jalen, with Zach, with Dyson, with Bogdanovic, there is sort of a bit of an overlap for that position. But I really can't see the Hawks making a deal unless it's a Godfather type offer there that would make absolutely no sense for them to turn it down.
Yep, I'm with you there. Which, by the way, really hurts the trade market, because they had some players that, like, I think some teams were. I know the Lakers were kind of checking in on DeAndre Hunter heading into the season. That was one of the names that they had kind of circled as somebody they were hoping would become available. He's on a decent contract. He we've seen, is willing to accept whatever role, good dude, all that stuff. And if you're Atlanta, why trade the guy? You're having a great season. Speaking of great seasons, let's talk about the mid-season awards. We'll just kind of quickly take a look through the awards. I have the current odds up in front of me here, so I'll go through some of the top odds guys, top favorites. Favorites to win these awards, and we'll kind of go through the list and see who we like here. We'll start with MVP, where Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is kind of the runaway favorite right now, minus 330. Next closest is Jokic at plus 260, and then from there it jumps way high to Giannis at plus 4,000. If it is Shai, if it looks like it's going to be Shai, at least if it was to be voted on now, what do you think about him as the MVP of the season this year?
Yeah, he's my favorite right now. He's got the numbers in terms of the shooting and the scoring. Obviously, Jokic has a little more in terms of rebounds and assists, and Jokic is just averaging 30 a game as well. But I feel that the Thunder could win 65 games or more here, and the Nuggets may not win 50. And I think that has to play into it. I think if a team let's say he has 15 to 18 more victories, and you've got the player out there putting up the numbers he is. I don't think it has to be Shai, but not. It's not only the numbers, man. Watching him play is like he's in such a groove right now. Feels like he can score anytime he wants. He's kind of got a slowish game, but it's deceptively fast. He's playing defense. The Thunder are just absolutely relentless, ruthless, relentless. There you go, relentless.
No, relentless is fine. Like dortless. Like, yeah, I like it. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. They've got the best defense in the league, and he's out there absolutely killing it, and they're winning. So, I would go heavy on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander from here because pending an injury. I think he's got the numbers, the wins, the narrative, the story, the team, the defense. I think he's going to romp to victory right now.
The defense part of this is the part that I just get so frustrated because people just don't talk about it. But he is legitimately one of the best on-ball perimeter defenders, maybe even on and off-ball perimeter defenders. And he also does the stuff that he does offensively. Incredible season for him. The other part of it too that I really enjoy is he's that quiet leader.
Yeah.
Where if something needs to be said, he'll say it or whatever and stuff like that. But I really like guys who lead through production and lead through example. And if you're on the Oklahoma City Thunder and you see your best player defending the way that Shai defends, I'm going to go out and defend, right? If you're on the Oklahoma City Thunder and the right play needs to be made, and you see Shai make the right play time and time again, I'm going to make the right play. And there is no there's very little ego across that roster and across that organization. I would love to see Shai win MVP this year. Be a great representation.
You see it after the games too, like when they do their post-game on court. Again, Shai is not separating himself or anything like that. He's like, we're all in this together. Having a great old time there with the reporter Nick Gallo, doing some fun stuff there. But that's the thing is you need wins, you need numbers, you need defense, and he's got it all. And again, I think Jokic having won 3 of the last 4, it's the fatigue does set in a little bit, even though his numbers, I think, are actually the best of his career.
Yeah.
But again, the Nuggets have started to play better. They're on pace right now, I think, for like a 51-31 season, so they might crack 50, but. Again, I think the Thunder at 66 or 67 wins, that almost automatically means it has to go to Shai.
Jokic might just deserve MVP outright for making Russell Westbrook a winning player. All right, let's move.
Wow.
It's absolutely
is
insane.
it possible that this is actually the most suitable teammate for Westbrook's entire career? I mean, Kevin Durant was great, but Jokic just does seem to actually know how to utilize him better than anyone else has.
I do think it is a legitimate leaf in his cap, what he has done with Russ. He asked for Russell Westbrook heading into the season, and then he has made it work with Russell Westbrook. His ability, Jokic, I think recognized, all right, if I'm going to make it work with Russ, I need to be a better shooter. And he turned himself into a 50% 3-point shooter this year at one point, and he's willing to work off of the ball. He's willing to, and I think also Russ, this is part of the thing that drives me kind of insane, is obviously Russell Westbrook is a very polarizing player in my mentions and in LA or for Lakers fans and stuff like that. And he's also a whole bunch of every opposing play-by-play and analyst crew, make sure to say, well, maybe Russ wasn't the problem in LA and stuff like that. And it's okay, yeah, all right. Let's just ignore everything and how it went down there and stuff. But I also think all of those snide comments kind of ignore the role that Russ has played and the growth that Russ has put on display this year, where he is cutting more. He is a better corner 3-point shooter. He is playing better defense. Like, these are all things that he needed to figure out for himself as a professional basketball player at this stage of his career, and he did. And it's been really fun to watch, and all of like the nonsense, like how it, you know, what kind of statement it means about the Lakers or how that relates to the Lakers. I don't care about that stuff. I think it's really cool that Russell Westbrook has grown as a person and as a player.
I remember there was one game for the Lakers where he put up just a shot, deep three early in the shot clock, didn't hustle back on defense, and his man scored. And I said, man, this is bad from Westbrook. Like this is sloppy, lazy, terrible shot,
Yeah.
and didn't hustle back. Oh, the mentions just,
Oh.
my God. And I was like,
Yeah.
I
He's
wasn't aggressive.
rabid fan base.
I was just like, hey, man, he can't do that. That's bad.
Yeah.
And I had to turn off the comments. I was like, oh my God, I'm never, ever tweeting about him again because, you know, again, it wasn't a personal attack. It was more like a highlighting, like, man, he's sloppy on this possession.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, I'm never saying anything about Russell again. Like, because people couldn't even accept the you know, what they were seeing with their eyes. Like, how can you shoot a three at the top of the key, you know, the top of the break three, and be then the last one back on defense? How can you be that sort of sloppy? And,
right.
But that no one wanted to hear that, man. It was just,
Well, everybody is planted their flag in the reality that they want to live in, and God forbid multiple things be true at the same time.
Oh, yeah.
Next one up here, we have Rookie of the Year, Alexander Sarr.
Yeah, I saw that. He's a favorite right now, isn't he?
Favorite?
Yeah.
Interesting. All right. Next up after him is Stephon Castle. Sarr is at plus 170. Castle's at plus 200. I've been very impressed by Castle this year.
Yeah.
Jalen Wells is at 350. Zach Edey is at 900. And then he doesn't get till Yves Misi and Risa Shea at 20 plus 2,400 and plus 4,800 respectively. It's pretty wide open still based on those numbers. I think if I had to put my money down on somebody, I'd probably say Castle. He's been fantastic. And I think a lot of people kind of forgot about like what kind of juice he has on the ball because of the role that he played at UConn and then, you know, how he's looked so far. But he is, I think he's gonna be a special player.
Oh, I think he's having a great season. He was the number 4 pick, I think, coming in to the season. But playing with Chris Paul is great for him, and playing with Wembanyama is great for him as well. Like, he's gotten tons of opportunity to go inside. He's had some big dunks. I mean, Alex Sarr has definitely improved from where he started the season, but I think it's down to Wells or Castle right now. My man, Zach Risa-Shea, he won't get it. He's had some good moments. He had the 6 threes, 33 points against the Knicks. But like a lot of rookies, he's just really struggled for that consistency in terms of his play and getting minutes and, you know, staying on the court and ending games as well. He hasn't really been able to do that. So I think Castle or Jalen Wells right now. But yes, when you said Sarr, I was like, I saw that too before the show. I'm like, oh, wow, Sarr? No way.
Yeah.
But
it doesn't help also that, like, because I'm on FanDuel, and every other player has a picture icon next to him.
Yeah.
And Sarr almost looks like a mistake because he doesn't have one there. It's super weird. Depoy, Defensive Player of the Year. You have Victor Wembanyama is the far and away favorite right now, minus 550. Next closest is Evan Mobley at plus 1,200. I think there's probably some value actually on Mobley, but wow, it is going to be difficult to see anybody wrestle this one away from Wemby, not just like this year, but maybe for the next decade.
Yeah. Mobley's a great defender, but I think Wembanyama's going to storm this one as well. I mean, watching him play defense, man, I just go back most mornings and watch his defensive plays and just see the blocks. And some of them, he had one against James Harden a week or so ago.
Did you see the one against Edey?
Yes.
Zach Edey is 7'4".
I know.
He just is like, no, just go.
But I think it was Harden who kind of beat him off the dribble.
Yeah.
And he sort of spun him around. And it's like Harden basically thought, all right, here's a layup. and his arm honestly seemed to come from like the 3-point line and just sort of tap it away. And I'm just like, oh my God, like that's freakish there. So yeah, that when you're that heavy a favorite to win it, again, it's only injuries that's going to prevent it, I think, from now, because the Spurs, not great, probably won't even make the play in, but just for his impact, the Cavs are going to be, second, third best team, most likely in the league. But I think their defense is, again, it's a team defense. And I think this just sort of feels like it's going to go to Wembanyama for the highlight blocks that we've seen.
Yeah, I think the greatest thing that you can say about Wemby are the plays that NBA players aren't interested in even attempting around him, right? Like, you have some of the absolute best athletes on planet Earth, who are all, the best players in the history of their cities in most cases. And they see Wemby near the rim and they're just like, no.
Thanks.
Yeah, we're good. All right, let's talk about most improved player. This one is I disagree with kind of the
concept of it.
Yeah, the concept of the way that they're kind of looking at this, because Cade Cunningham right now is minus 125, and then you have Evan Mobley, who's at plus 500. Those two guys are just young.
Yeah,
like they're just young, former. I think, in Cade's case, he was the first pick overall, and then in Evan Mobley's case, I think he was a top 3 pick.
I think you're right. Yeah,
and then and like they were just like, they're just growing as like, to me, I always thought, most improved player was player who had a really down year or something like that, came back and looked a lot better. Like Tyler Hero's a little bit closer to this. He's at plus 650. But even he was hurt for most of last year. So I don't know if how much of him improving, quote unquote, is just him being healthy, though he is probably having the best shooting season in the NBA this year. To me, like, the way that the vote would normally go historically was for Norman Powell, who's at plus 900. Like, I would probably put a couple bucks down on Norman Powell for winning this, because he went from somebody who was like a salary dump from Portland, somebody who was in trade talks all offseason, from the Clippers standpoint. And then he has basically helped keep the Clippers afloat while Kawhi got healthy, and has been a great story this year. Easily the most efficient offensive season of his career. That's who should like win these kinds of awards.
Yeah, this award is always like that, where it feels, a guy who's picked 1 or 2, in his 3rd or 4th season, going for 25 a game or whatever. That is what you expect, rather than most improved. It should be, again, DeAndre Hunter, I think, deserves to be in consideration for this, because he's improved his game so much. Now, are his numbers drastically bigger? No, but it's more about the presence and then the development and the growth. And Norm Powell's a great example of that. A guy who's bounced around a little bit after the Raptors, but he's clearly an improved all-around player, and therefore should be considered for this. But it's a little bit like the 6th man of the year, that tends to just be, hey, man, is a guy scoring, 25 a game that he hadn't broken the 20-point barrier before? That's probably who we're going with. And especially if he's a starter and maybe, on a team that's, improved itself last season. So I'm the same. I sort of, the criteria seems a little vague. I think there should be a little bit more like, okay, most improved, that sort of most surprisingly improved as well, rather than like a guy who, maybe got off to a slower start in his career. I mean, Dyson Daniels should be in consideration for this, for the most improved defense, but he's also having a significantly improved offensive season. But again, he's not averaging 25 a game, so I think that's where it's going to be hard for him.
We do have some love for DeAndre Hunter in the next one, where in 6th man of the year, you have Peyton Pritchard leading the way at minus 185, but then you have DeAndre Hunter at plus 470, coming in second so far. Then you have Amen Thompson, Santi Aldama, Malik Beasley, and Bradley Beal rounding out the odds favorites. Pritchard is kind of the the way that this vote normally would go, right? The
Yeah.
offensive engine who is scoring efficiently and quantitatively as well. But I think I would give it to Hunter here. I think between the two guys, I think Hunter plays more impactful basketball coming off of the bench.
Oh, and defensively for sure. Peyton started off on fire, and I think he's probably averaging the most points off the bench there. But yeah, again, I've been at the advantage of seeing Hunter for every game that he's played. Certainly here in Atlanta, and then on TV when they've been on the road. And I just cannot say enough how he has embraced that role. On nights when they've been shorthanded from the starting lineup, whether Jalen's not been there or Zachary Shai's not been there, Quinn Snyder's been going with Vic Krejci over DeAndre still. So DeAndre's like not just playing the good soldier when he came back from injury and the birth of his child. He's actually like, no, give me that role now. Give me the role of the six man, and he's thriving in it. So that and defensively, he gets some of the toughest assignments as well. He's basically there, Dyson Daniels sub on the defensive end. Like if you got to take on the biggest assignment, it goes to Hunter. So he's doing it all, and I think it's down to those two right now. Anyway, Pritchard's been good. I mean, he goes out there and he just fires away.
Oh, sure.
That's what the Celtics ask him to do, and he does it really, really well. So he's going to do it. I think he had another 20 there last night. He's got that green light. So he's going to have the numbers coming off the bench. It's really going to help him. And, he's been good. But I think for more a two-way impact, I would go with Hunter right now.
Yep, I'm with you. And then this one's an easy one. Coach of the year, I don't even think anybody needs to write their name in. It's Kenny Atkinson. The turnaround that we've seen in Cleveland is pretty impressive.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's him or Dagnall in OKC, really. But I think the turnaround is I mean, Kenny walking in there, man. Remember the Charlotte Hornets offered him the job and he said yes a few years ago, and then he was like, nah, I'm going back to Golden State.
He went golfing with Michael Jordan, who's like,
yeah.
No.
Yeah, but it's amazing because I just think about those Brooklyn Nets teams that he coached, and the vibes seem to have transported over to Cleveland right now, where it's like, man, they just look so much like they're having so much fun on the bench and they're cheering each other on, and they're going to have maybe 2 to 4 all-stars as well, depending on exactly how it all shapes out. But he's been great, and it's very, very hard to see how anyone would take that award off him. I mean, unless someone has a really big surge down the stretch, I think it's down to he or Dagnall. But again, I think Kenny's the favorite right now.
Remember when Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving asked them to fire Kenny Atkinson so they could hire Steve Nash? Whoop.
Yep.
Whoops. All right, that is going to do it here. Oh no, we have we'll really quickly tease this. Thursday, we are going to be heading back down to Buenos Aires. Leigh, what do you have in store for us for this trip?
So I released another video today from La Boca, and then I'm going to actually talk about my trip to the Boca Juniors Stadium, the basketball stadium that I had a private tour on. The guys took really good care of me, and got to shoot around on the court. It's always cool. Like, I love playing on outdoor courts, but it's always cool when you get that private access to a main indoor court there. So that was fun. Unfortunately, there's no game on. The season wasn't on while I was there, but it's just good to see it be there, and get a bit of a feel for what it's like for basketball in Argentina.
Man, I'm jealous. Those are my favorite things to do. I remember the first time back when I was covering the Dodgers, the first time I walked onto Dodger Stadium and felt my feet there in the dirt in the outfield, on the warning track. I was like, man, this is so
awesome.
Cool.
Yeah.
These guys get to play here all the time. Unbelievable.
And also, sorry, the video I put together from the Manu Ginobili court that I talked about on Thursday or Friday show, Manu gave it a like. So we made it. We reached Manu, gave it a like. So
It
all
probably
worth it.
wasn't the one where I called out the fact that there's a bald spot on the Manu court.
No mention of that. Yeah. But Manu made it.
All
Very
right.
lucky.
Well, that is going to do it here for this episode of the Basketball Passport podcast. Leigh, please be safe this week out there as you guys face the freeze. I will try to do the same here as well. Everybody out there watching, please be safe with this weird ass climate that we now get to live in. And then we will be back on Friday to talk about that trip, in that Buenos Aires trip, some goings on across the world, and then obviously whatever happens over the next 4 days or so in the NBA. So until then, have a great rest of your weekend, everybody, and we will talk to you on Friday.